Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our EALTA webinar this afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. People are just logging on now, so I'll just introduce our webinar today while everybody logs on. This is part of the EALTA webinar series. That's a series of free webinars on topics of interest to the language assessment community and beyond. The topics we've had so far have been based on interests of EALTA members. So we've had webinars on things like statistics for language testing, integrated skills, standards and the CFR, and our last one on sign language tests. Today's topic is going to be language assessment literacy. I'll introduce myself first of all. My name is Richard Spivey. I'm the EALTA webinar coordinator, and I'm also a test development researcher at the British Council. In today's webinar, we're going to have a talk for about 45 minutes, plus after that we hope to have about 10 or 15 minutes of questions. In the screen in front of you, you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation and also our two speakers, including myself. I suggest that you use the view options at the top of the page, the top right-hand corner of the page, to play around with the view and make sure that you have the PowerPoint large and the speakers smaller at the side. And you can adjust the size of each part as you wish. So the other functions we have, the Q&A function, you can put in questions at any time, and we'll give answers at the end of Dina's talk. And you can also use the chat function to introduce yourself or bring up any other issues that you have during the session. Now, we hope that the technology works well today. We seem to have had some good luck with this so far, but please forgive any minor technical issues that come up during the talk. So I'll briefly introduce our speaker today, another long-time EALTA member. That's Professor Dina Tsagari. And the title of her talk is Language Assessment Literacy, the What, Why and How. So Dina is a professor in English Language Pedagogy and TESOL at the Department of Primary and Secondary Education at Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway. She holds PhD in Linguistics from Lancaster University in the UK, and she's previously worked for the University of Cyprus and the Greek Open University. Her research interests include language testing and assessment, teacher training, materials design and evaluation, differentiated instruction, multilingualism, distance education, and learning difficulties. So lots of topics of interest there. So I think that's enough from me, Dina. If you're ready to start your talk, then over to you.
Yep, I'm ready. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be able to talk to so many people at the same time. I can't see where you're coming from, but after the slideshow and after the 45 minutes, I'll be able to take questions and probably get to see who you are. I was a little bit surprised when Richard earlier said that there's more than 100 people, so thank you very much for joining this webinar. Even though it's almost Christmas is almost around the corner, I see that quite a lot of you have an interest in language assessment literacy, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. With a little bit of snow in the background coming from Bergen, I think I'm just going to start with the what first. And I'd like all of us to look at this very well-known definition of assessment that I think very much relates to classroom-based language assessment that we've all been experiencing, I think, or it relates to most of you, which refers to those activities undertaken by teachers and or by their students, which provide information to be used as feedback to modify the teaching and learning activities in which they're engaged. So teachers, students, modifications, information, feedback, learning and teaching activities are involved in this definition. who doesn't know the difference between, let me just go back for a minute, this slide, between summative and formative assessment? To those of you who don't, here's one very brief one that I downloaded from Wikipedia, and I think it's suitable for the purposes of this webinar, just to give us a background a little bit to discussions of formative and summative assessment that will come later on in this presentation. So formative assessment, what is it? It's a range of formal and informal assessment procedures conducted by teachers during the learning process in order to modify teaching and learning activities to improve student attainment. It is commonly contrasted with summative assessment, which seeks to monitor educational outcomes, often for purposes of external accountability. And of course, there are many more formative and summative assessment definitions out there, but I thought this is general enough to give us a little bit of the background and the differences between the two. So I hope you're okay if I move my head left and right, because I'm looking at two screens at the same time. But coming back to teachers, and teachers really having to work with the most formative types of assessment, what we normally refer to as minute-to-minute classroom assessments, whiteboard responses to key questions, to more formative assessment types, like the types of teacher-developed assessment for learning, or grade-level team-developed common assessments, for example, or screening, diagnostic and ongoing monitoring of the students' performance and progress, to more summative types of assessment, like those developed for district purposes, or teacher developed and end of unit assessments, all the way to most summative assessments, such as the end of the year exams, university entrance exams, and so much more. So quite a lot of what's happening nowadays in the classroom relates to a lot of challenges for teachers. Therefore, very frequently teachers not only have to address the previous types of assessment, ranging from more formative all the way to more summative types of assessment, but they also need to maintain balance and respond to mandates for formative and summative assessment. They need to design and administer classroom tests themselves. They need to offer courses that will be able to help the learners successfully take international stakes, high stakes language exams, be able to critically evaluate standardized tests that they have to administer. They also need to employ self and peer assessments, and sometimes they even need to implement other types of assessments, such as portfolios. They also need to consider the assessment needs of minority students, such as very young learners, or adult learners, or students with special learning difficulties, or multilingual students, etc., etc. So there's quite a range of assessment challenges for teachers out there. So how can teachers be able to address all these challenges? But of course, one way of doing that is to help teachers develop assessment literacy, awareness, and skills. The term that was coined by Stiggins back in 1991, that others refer to as the ability to understand, analyze, and apply information on student performance to improve instruction. Recently, we put the word language in front of language assessment literacy, since we're all language people, I think, in this webinar, that refers basically to having the capacity to ask and answer critical questions about the purpose for assessment, about the fitness of the tools being used, and about what's going to happen on the basis of the assessment results. And I'd like to present you with the final one. That's something that was worked on with my colleague, Karin Vogt, referring to basically the ability to design, to develop, and critically evaluate tests and other assessment procedures, as well as the ability to monitor, evaluate, grade, and score assessments on the basis of theoretical knowledge. Research that we've done in the field already with the theoretical background, we've done quite a lot. So other than these definitions, we have already conceptualized and defined, maybe perhaps in slightly different ways, language assessment literacy. We've done quite extensive work actually researching the language assessment literacy of teachers, and other stakeholders in various other aspects. For example, we worked with policymakers, with test users, testing instructors, and teacher trainers as well. We looked at contents of textbooks that promise to raise teachers' language assessment literacy, and we have also worked with the content and syllabi of courses that are offered to raise and enhance teachers' language assessment literacy. Other than that, there's been quite some work done in implementing assessment reforms that would help design and produce effective assessments, but also the actual assessment practices in the classroom have been already recorded in the work of quite a number of researchers. What these researchers have done is they used a range of methodological designs that used quite different types of methods of collecting their data, all the way from protocols and surveys and national surveys and questionnaires to classroom observations, to collections of documents and self-reported cases and all kinds of audio materials that we collected from the teachers and their students in relation to levels, skills, and awareness of assessment skills. In the field, quite a number of models have been proposed already, and who doesn't know the very well-known Taylor 2013 model, where Taylor profiles levels of language assessment literacy for 4 different types of stakeholders. You can see 4 different spider webs. Well, they're not, but basically what they portray is the different levels of language assessment literacy over various domains, such as, for example, technical skills, principles and context, language pedagogy, local practices, personal beliefs and attitudes, and scores and decision making that are not necessarily the same for all different stakeholders. So if you look at B, for example, on the top right-hand corner, knowledge of theory and scores and decision making, for example, for classroom teachers, is not expected to be as high as it is for, let's say, professional language testers, which is the website, the right hand side, just below the classroom teacher's spider web. But we really need to address these issues. We haven't had the opportunity to research enough the Taylor Lull profiles yet. There have been some publications, but more is coming. From the field of general education, the Shu and Brown 2016 conceptualizes teacher assessment literacy in practice as a pyramid model, starting all the way from the knowledge bases that practitioners, for example, need to have and going up to assessors' identity construction. And I think this is quite a comprehensive model that we also need to inform our research design in the future and familiarize ourselves with, because it's very informative and it's been based on reviewing quite a number of other research already. But overall, what are the lessons that we learned so far? What we've seen again and again is that language assessment literacy is an important aspect of professionalism and professionalization among teachers, and that language assessment literacy fosters teachers' empowerment and autonomy. And therefore, we need to consider different ways, or maybe perhaps a variety of ways, of raising teachers' language assessment literacy. How can we do that? Well, one way of doing that is through training, through raising awareness, first of all, through helping teachers acquire the knowledge, the skills and the abilities to help them monitor, to help them produce effective language assessments. And how can they do that? Well, this is the time when I will talk a little bit about our own way of helping teachers raise their levels of assessment literacy. And this is a project that probably some of you already know, but some others might not know. titled Teachers Assessment Literacy Enhancement, the so-called TAIL Erasmus Plus project. That was funded by Erasmus, and where it started in 2015 and finished last August 2018. Well, these are the culprits. These are the people who took part in this project, starting on the left with professor now, Nikos Ifakis from the Hellenic Open University, Professor Anthony Green, University of Bedfordshire, and then on the right-hand side, Dr. Ildiko Giapes, University of Debrecen, and Professor Karin Vogt, University of Education in Heidelberg. In the middle, the two of us who managed the project, myself and my colleague, Dr. Jason Labrianou from the University of Cyprus. And of course, this was not all. So many other important people participated in this project, from Professor Liz Ham-Lyons to very soon Dr. Stefania Cordia and Dr. Anna Mavrouthi, but others who were the soul and and actually supported the project in so many different ways. For example, Claudia, Veronica, Adrienne, Marianne, and our Moodle company as well, Wide Services. We all met different phases of those 3 years in different places, all very excited and very enthusiastic, working on this project. A project that promised to identify language testing and assessment training needs of teachers in all those 5 countries, to create open educational resources, that is an online course that would develop English language teachers' assessment literacy, promote a feedback provision culture that benefits language learning, and also integrate stakeholders' experiences, and at the same time be able to disseminate project outcomes in the form of a handbook that could be used by both trainers and trainees as their own materials of raising awareness over these issues. And this is just a screenshot from the website. You can log on at the same time if you want to. It's very easy to log on to the website. It's basically tailproject.eu. And I'd like to present to you just a few buttons and a few things that are already there on the top bar chart here, and where it says go to courses. And just very briefly to let you know that there are various drop-down menus. I'm just going to click on some of them just to give you a very quick basically tour of how you can yourselves work with materials that we've uploaded on the platform, on the online self-study course that we created for you. That comprises 8 modules, an introductory module titled The ABCs of Assessment, modules that focus on helping various users on how to assess reading skills, writing, listening, speaking, on how to provide feedback, on how to work with alternatives in assessment, and how to work with test impact. I don't know if you want to try this out with me, but the minute you press any one of these courses, either ABC of assessment or assessment reading skills, the next screen that you see is basically a screen that looks like this. So for example, I clicked on the ABCs of assessment for you, where you can read that this course introduces some of the concepts that you will encounter in other courses on this website. So this is a very short description of what the course is about, and you can access the course by clicking the word here that is written in blue. And what you can see next is a screen that requires you to basically log in. I have already logged in myself, so you can see my username, but you can't see my password. But if this is your first time here, you can create your own new account very quickly and very easily. There are instructions on the right-hand side how to do this. And immediately where you take in to next is basically a screen that looks like this. Sorry, these are just various screenshots that I created for you, but this is not all. You can see on the next screen, probably you can see a lot more. But there's a standard way of looking at this next screen, which comprises basically of smaller screens that you can click on, but they're more or less the same. We decided to go for this way of showing on the screen, where you can read about the aims, the expected outcomes, and key concepts as you enter each one of the courses. Then there's a brief introduction about the content of the course and various topics that, of course, would give you access to various activities and different types of or different modality types of input. There's at the end further reading, evaluation, and a section and a final section where you can look at and evaluate the course. I just clicked on the first one titled Aims, Expected Outcomes and Key Concepts. So every time you click on this first screen, we are going to get information about what the course does. In this case, the first one, the ABCs in assessment, would introduce you to basically some of the expected outcomes, as I said, and key concepts. And some of the key concepts appear in blue. Some of these words are in blue, basically because they're linked to a glossary that can define these words in case you need to read the definitions at this stage before you work on the activities that are introduced later on. So as I said, first you look at the, you have the chance to read about the aims, and if this is what you're interested in, then you click on the next arrow that you can see on the right hand side, just behind the screen, I think. This is another, maybe perhaps a little bit clearer depiction of the screenshot that I created for you earlier, where you can see more clearly what the aims, the expected outcomes, and key concepts, at least for the first course is. As I said before, there are various other windows that you can click on, and this is where basically your work on the courses starts. So for example, I'm just now looking at topic number 3, recording and reporting outcomes. As you can see from on this slide, this is a screenshot that I'm using now from topic 3, just basically to illustrate the fact that users on the platform of any of the topics and any of the courses on the online course do not really need to read a lot, in the sense that the materials, the way we present them, and the way probably you're going to be working with, introduce you to a lot of hands-on activities and tasks that you're going to work with based on your needs, and of course the ones that you select through a lot of experiential ways. And of course input is also presented in the form of some general statements that you can, for example, read above the screen or by watching videos. So in terms of reading, the weight is not really heavy. Actually, it's not heavy at all. And most often you would need to work with the tasks to explore a lot of the aspects and the issues of the content of those courses. The activities that you're going to be working with in the courses that we designed on the platform are very simple and easy to do. Exploratory tasks, for example, you will be asked to work on drag and drop activities like the one that you can see right now, where you're requested to drag and drop the words helpful or unhelpful in the spaces below. Basically, this is an activity that looks at how you can give feedback, and you can evaluate the types of feedback that are presenting in this activity. Other types of activities would comprise, for example, drop-down menus with 4 or maybe more options like this one. Again, this is an activity on feedback. In this case, you will be asked to put the feedback on the learner's writing assignment in the correct order. Other types of activities, more or less like the ones that I mentioned, again, the drag and drop and closed items like this, would actually give the users the opportunity to reflect on the statements and then, of course, to look at the right answers at the end of the topics that they decide to choose. At the end of the courses, there's also further reading that comes in the form of easy access readings that they can do, but also by watching more videos that we borrowed actually or linked to the very good work that the British Council has done that I'm going to refer to later on. Just before the users leave the courses, they will be asked to do some sort of evaluation on the basis of the outcomes that they think they have been able to come out with after working on the course. That looks like this, for example. This is just a screenshot of the responses of some of the what some of the people have already evaluated as part of their work on the first course, the ABCs of assessment, where the users can click on statements that basically refer to the various outcomes of the first course. Just before they exit, they also are invited to participate in the evaluation questionnaire of the course, where, as you can see on the left-hand side, basically they talk about themselves and then they evaluate the content and appearance of the course. As I said earlier, there's also a link to a glossary. This is just a screenshot of the glossary that we have created as part of the online course that users can learn from and extend their knowledge and understanding of various terminology. I just inserted test impact, and test impact in the glossary is defined as the ways in which tests, usually high stakes tests, can influence different aspects of the whole teaching, learning, and language use infrastructure. And because of its relation to washback, the washback definition also appears on the screen. In the platform, we have also designed kind of kit and a kind of companion that can help those who work on online courses for the first time, and especially on the TAIL platform for the first time with kind of screenshots with a lot of information on how users can navigate on the various parts and aspects of the course. Just a quick example here, you can see where you basically can go when you first start your navigation on the website. On the screen, for example, you can get information about how you can get to different courses, how you can click on courses and see what the content of the courses is, and so on and so forth. More or less what I've just done for you. Other than the online course, which is self-study, easy to access for most of you who are busy professionals, and you can get to choose whatever you want, we have compiled more or less the same materials in a handbook that is also freely accessible from the website. So those of you who want to work with a more traditional kind of modality of a teacher training seminar, you can download the Handbook of Assessment for Language Teachers that is freely accessible from the TAIL platform. Actually, quite a lot of teachers these days use the materials on the platform in a blended fashion. They get to work on some of the activities from the handbook, and they do quite a lot of practice on the online through the online platform. The handbook also contains an additional section at the end of every chapter that refers to how teachers can address the needs of students with learning difficulties when it comes to assessing their English language progress and proficiency as well. I would very much encourage teachers to download the handbook, but at the same time use the activities that are uploaded on the platform. What we've done in terms of disseminating the program, actually, TAIL, other than webinars like this, is that we had an international conference at the end of the 3-year-long life of the project, where Glenn Fulcher and Gudrun Eriksson were two of our plenary speakers. We have already disseminated the project through local teachers' newsletters and research journals such as Computer and Education. And now TALE features as an additional reference to major language testing and assessment associations such as EALTA, who were kind enough to connect to the platform and offer TALE as one of their additional links to engaging and helping users enhance their language assessment literacy. TALE also features as a useful link and resource on the EALTA website, and we are grateful for that as well. But also TALE appears on local teachers associations such as the CITE, this is the Cyprus Teachers of English Association. TALE is also on social networks such as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So far, TALE has been quite visible. Just a quick research on May 12th actually gave us a very interesting result. At least it was rewarding for us to see that more than 550 followers are working on the platform. And of course, every now and then we would get a lot of notifications through LinkedIn that in this case, the 5th of May 2019, there were more than 783 registered members and more than 2,500 users who have visited the website. And in terms of frequency of downloading the handbook, actually, again, at the beginning of May, there were more than 8,000 people who downloaded the website. And recently, we were honored by the British Council Assessment Research Awards and Grants with a grant actually as a project that received the Innovation in Assessment Prize in 2019, and we were very happy about that. Yay. So if you haven't tried the TALE Project EU platform, and if you're in need of downloading the handbook for your personal awareness in how to learn and how to acquire assessment knowledge, abilities and skills, and how to produce effective assessments, how to work with alternative assessments and offer constructive and effective feedback and how to address issues of test impact, please log on to the website and try it now. But of course, that's not the only way that practitioners can raise and enhance their language assessment literacy. Of course, there are many more resources out there that can help widen and expand practitioners' assessment literacy. I'd like to talk to you about another project that we are very happy to participate in. That's called Enrich. And Enrich is actually the title refers to English as a lingua franca practices for inclusive and multilingual classrooms. And it's a consortium of 6 different associations, and we are one of them. The project is led by the Hellenic Open University, and the aim is to promote teacher competencies necessary for integrating English as a lingua franca in multilingual classrooms, and to be able to develop a continuous professional development course that actually has a lot of interesting components, one of them being assessment in teaching and assessing English as a lingua franca, which has so far been debated for years now. And we hope that by providing a course on how to address issues of assessment within ELF environments in the online CBT of Enrich, will problematize the field and will help teachers raise awareness at least of issues of assessment within ELF. ELF has already produced a website that is freely accessible, and very soon the CBT course is going to be uploaded. We've worked very hard over the last 1.5 years to produce the various modules. We're implementing the modules this coming spring, and on the basis of which we're going to revise and improve them and produce yet another handbook, all of which are going to be freely accessible at the from September 2020. So stay tuned and help us disseminate the materials and download as much as you want. More sources on assessment literacy, of course. The British Council has done also marvelous work on basically raising assessment literacy through a series of very, very interesting animated assessment videos on a variety of topics, ranging from test development all the way to CFR and language assessment, technology and language assessment, for example, that are accompanied also by very interesting activities. The British Council is also offering a language assessment in the classroom MOOC, a very interesting course that you might also like to opt for. And various handbooks, very interesting, such as the one that you're looking at right now on how language assessment works, with a very interesting coverage of a lot of exciting aspects in the field. Of course, EALTA has done marvelous work uploading a range of very useful resources under on their website, and under the resources option on the left hand side. Those of you with an interest might like to become members of various special interest groups. I'm sure quite a lot of you have done, but click on resources and see what EALTA offers in terms of raising awareness of a variety of issues. Also, prior to the conferences of EALTA, a range of SIGs offer quite a lot of lively discussions in terms of various aspects and issues, such as, for example, the SIG of classroom-based language assessment, or the SIG of Common European Framework or writing and academic purposes. And it will be a pleasure to see very many of you joining the SIG meetings prior to the EALTA conferences every year. But of course, there's so many other associations, such as the one very important SIG that is affiliated to ITEFL, the Testing and Evaluation Assessment SIG, that offers conferences and webinars, such as the one that you can see on your screen. There's a very interesting webinar that is co-organized by SIG of ITEFL and special needs coming next spring, with plenary speakers that are very familiar to you, one of them being Richard. Sorry, Richard, I couldn't resist. And very many others who will be offering exciting presentations. Also, the European Center for Modern Languages and European Commission Cooperation on Innovative Methodologies and Assessment in Language Learning has been offering a variety of seminars on raising users and teachers language assessment literacy. We co-organized one with them, the so-called ECLM Center, last June, and it was a great success, actually. And of course, a lot of examination boards, such as, for example, the Cambridge Assessment English, are offering webinars for teachers that are free, and you can get to watch them at your leisure and your free time, and you can learn really a lot of issues. But of course, training is one thing, and in practice, it seems that teachers learn quite a lot about language assessment and enhance their levels of language assessment through face-to-face training sessions, through formal language testing and assessment courses that are offered by various universities and colleges around the world. Quite a lot of pre and in-service programs, conferences, and events are opportunities and venues and spaces for practitioners to raise their levels and understanding of assessment issues. But of course, I would very much encourage teacher assessment teams where teachers learn from each other, where they reflect on their assessment practices, and they create communities of practice where they can share their concerns and help create and design effective assessments. That can actually culminate into collaborative assessment projects that could also employ action research, where an area that is in need of work and reflection can be focused on, and it can be worked on collaboratively with other teachers. But of course, I would also encourage teacher publications. There's quite a lot of newsletters and EALT publications around the world where teachers can actually send out their own experiences on various types of assessment in writing and share with other teachers. And let me see. And last but not least, of course, teacher presentations that are encouraged through so many events and conferences by so many associations could become venues where teachers can share lots of their assessment concerns, and they can learn from each other. But of course, those of you who would like to undertake more formal research, there is also the opportunity of working on dissertations either at undergraduate, postgraduate, or doctoral level. But of course, needless to say that one can learn quite a lot from reading some of the most recent publications in the field, such as books such as, for example, Assessing Young Learners or Language Assessment in Practice, or books that are written by very well-known authors in the field. I would highly recommend all of them, so it's up to you depending on where you are and where you work to get hold of any of these publications that will surely be able to add and enhance your language assessment literacy. I'm going to stop now, and just before we take in and start talking and discussing some of the questions that I'm sure are already piling up, I would like to thank you all and wish you Merry Christmas to you and your family, since Christmas is just around the corner. And from the very little Norwegian that I managed to pick up, let me also wish all of you God Jul. Och happy nyår. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. That was great. Yeah, it was just, I think we're overwhelmed by the amount of resources you've kind of put our way. That's excellent. There's lots for us to look at there and to go through. So I hope everyone that you found this interesting and informative. I certainly have. If you do have any questions, please send them in. There are one or two questions that we've had already, so I'll just put those to you. One question that we had that came up in the chat, Dina, was whether there's a scale for measuring language assessment literacy or a framework by which we can measure it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there have been attempts in the literature to measure the levels of language assessment literacy, but I think that this needs to be contextualized and they need to be adapted to the needs of the local context. But yes, there have been attempts to do that.
Okay. One question that we had in by email was After,
Sorry, Richard, you have to read those questions to me because I can't see them.
yeah, so I've got one of them here, which was after you'd done the TAIL project, which was a huge project. What were the main lessons that you learned as a professional?
Actually, I had a few slides, but then I decided to take them away because I wasn't sure whether the audience would be interested. So thank you for bringing this up. One of the major lessons that we learned from working on TAIL was that surely language assessment literacy is a major issue, and it needs to be contextualized on so many different levels, not just contextualized within the local educational system, but also contextualized at a micro level, that is the levels of students the teachers work for. So the needs of teachers who want to do assessment with young learners is going to be surely different from those who work with advanced levels or with older age students, or with students who want, for example, to prepare themselves for exams, as opposed to students who are just dealing with classroom-based assessment. So contextualizing language assessment literacy is very important, understanding the needs of the system, the local traditions, and of course piloting the materials prior to any kind of teacher training courses is very important, with maybe perhaps a group of smaller teachers, or being able to undertake any kinds of needs analysis is also important before any type of language assessment literacy course, or innovation, or endeavor, or any kind of implementation takes place. And this is what we learned. And of course, language assessment literacy enhancement is a collaborative work because it entails a lot of work. And so if you're planning to offer, for example, a program that would help practitioners and teachers and others to raise their levels of understanding around these issues, it has to be the coordinated effort of more than one person. It's not just one person who can undertake this huge stuff. And as I said, becoming knowledgeable of the traditions of the system, the mandates and the requirements is also very important.
Okay, I'll go to another question. Okay, a quick question here about the TAIL project. Does the TAIL project offer a certificate after completion? Is that the way it works?
We would very much like to be able to do that. We have already started thinking about a TAIL 2 that would give us the opportunity to, first of all, transfer the platform from MOOC technology, that is now the basis of TAIL, into MOOC, and help those who want to certify or recognize the course for a number of ECTSs, for example, to be able to incorporate this into their own teacher education programs and be able to issue a certificate on the basis of that. The way TAIL is structured at the moment is an online, freely accessible resource that is not providing a certificate, because we didn't want that to be the case. But those who want to undertake the task of recognizing the course as a number of ECTSs within their own institutions can very well do that, because to go through the courses and be able to cover all the materials, of course, requires an amount of hours and time that can be credited for within individual institutions. But in the future, as part of this TAIL 2 idea, we're hoping we will be able to do this.
Okay, good. So that's future development, we hope.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, we've got lots more questions coming in. Here's a big question. I don't know how much you want to answer this. I'm sure this is a question shared by many people. How do we promote formative assessment in a centralized education system which is very exam oriented?
All right.
That's a difficult one.
Okay.
But I'm sure that that's, you know, many countries around the world. I'm not sure which country this comes from, but I'm sure it's shared by
Yeah,
experience of many people.
yeah, this is far too general. This is a question that could be interpreted and answered in so many different ways. Well,
Yeah.
if it is a centralized, high stakes standardized testing system, of course, it's not an easy thing to implement formative assessment practices. But within smaller groups within the classroom, I think that teachers can introduce a number of formative assessment activities and practices, and they can organize their everyday teaching and their everyday instruction in such a way that they can collect information about the progress of their students, and they can set up effective feedback mechanisms that can help students reflect on their own learning and progress. And this could be the beginning of a much bigger formative assessment implementation plan. But I believe in teachers. Teachers can do so much in the classroom beyond high stakes language exam preparation. But if this needs to be formalized within the system of a high stakes exam policy, then we can go on discussing this forever.
Yes. Yeah, that question was from Malaysia, by the way.
Okay, but surely I can pick it up and we can have a discussion with the person who raised the question. Maybe after the webinar, feel free to email me. My email is on the PowerPoint website and my own website as well.
Okay. I'm just looking. Okay, so related to that one, you're talking about teachers and formative assessment. We have one question said, isn't the main challenge now the persuasion of teachers to change their assessment habits by developing language assessment literacy?
Right. Well, it's not a matter of persuading them. It's a matter of helping them see that they need to change things. So I would start the kind of language assessment literacy enhancement from helping teachers see how much they're able to do, and helping them see that had they introduced some changes, things would have been a lot better. So capitalizing on what they do and what more they can do in order to be able to produce effective assessments, I would start from this premise that teachers need to be able to feel confident in the assessment space that they are, and to help them maybe perhaps improve some of the aspects of their own assessment practices in order to be able to offer more effective practice in terms of assessment.
Okay.
Rather than persuade.
Right. Okay. No, that's a good point, I think. We did have another question which was emailed in yesterday, which was quite about very specific contexts. So I'm not sure if we could provide kind of strong answers to those. But there was one question from somebody who's teaching in an EAL context and was asking about, says formative assessment is recommended, but would summative assessment also be useful? So I guess maybe we could generalize that into what do you think the balance, you know, could be with formative and summative assessment? Perhaps we could look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on any particular course, I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, it's definitely, I mean, an issue of balance here. How much one needs to implement in terms of summative assessment, if there are mandates and policies and requirements, and how much you can do in terms of formative assessment and assessment for learning, and the balance between the two, and the time, of course, and the restrictions and limitations, and of course, above all, the number of students.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair enough. Okay, I think we've just got time for maybe one or two more.
Okay.
Okay. someone asks, I'd like to read your publications. Would you
Okay.
advise any?
Okay. Well, quite a lot of them are freely accessible. So, yeah, thank you.
Any particular that you would recommend, Dina? Of anything?
Well, it depends. It depends on what it is that people are interested in. Some of the work that I've done with my colleague Karen Vogt on language assessment literacy, I think is quite interesting, we hope, because we've carried out a European survey looking at the needs of teachers in various countries around Europe. This was published in Language Assessment Quarterly in 2014, but there's another publication that is freely accessible from the website of the research papers in language testing and assessment by ALTANS, and this is the Association of Australia and New Zealand, that is freely accessible, looking basically at interviews we conducted with a number of teachers in these countries who told us quite a lot of interesting issues that tap on issues of formative and summative assessment and give, we think, a real picture, a genuine picture of how teachers cope with their assessment demands on a daily basis. So I think this is an interesting paper. Of course, there are all other papers, but I think in relation to language assessment literacy, these are interesting papers. And of course, the needs analysis report that we have uploaded on the website of TAIL, just above the drop-down menu where users can log on and go to courses. Just above that, there's also the prompt for downloading the needs analysis report, where those of you who are interested in finding out about levels of language assessment literacy of teachers in all the countries that were involved in this project can be easily and freely accessible.
Okay, thank you, Dina. I think that's all the time we have now for questions. I'm really sorry if we couldn't answer everything or answer everything as fully as perhaps some people wanted. But yeah, we could talk forever
Yeah.
for the rest of the day about this
Yeah.
topic quite easily.
But we don't have to. I mean, for as long as people log on to TAIL and download the handbook and they work on the courses that we have designed, I think this is a good first solid step towards acquiring language assessment literacy.
So please, everyone, do go to, we will be sharing these slides later on and the video on the EALTA website. So you can then go and look at all the resources that Dina's mentioned today, and especially the TAIL project, and hopefully get some benefit and use out of those. But we'll have to say goodbye for today. I just want to thank Dina again for a great talk, and thanks to everyone for joining in today. If you have any feedback about today's session, you can please send to myself by email. And we'll be having more webinars from EALTA. So the next one will be in the new year, topic to be confirmed. If you have any suggestions, then please send those in as well. As I said, this recording should be put up on the EALTA website with the slides again soon. So thanks again, Dina, and thanks to everyone else for coming in today. And we'll hopefully see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye-bye.